Welcome to our second Product MBA Product Leadership Series. This time we're talking everything customer insight. Today I'm going to be speaking with Dan Entwistle, product consultant and also part of our alumni network, I think part of our last cohort. So Dan, you work a fair bit in B2B, right? Your background's mainly B2B. Maybe to kick us off, like what are the main challenges, let's say, in leveraging customer insight in a B2B environment?
Yeah, it's a good question. The last two roles that I've been in have been in B2B product management, and I think one of the hardest problems for product people is to get access to customer insight, customer data.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there are a few reasons for this. Firstly, there are fewer customers generally in B2B environment. So negative there is the data itself. There's less data for analytics. So it's hard to do true A/B testing. And also if you're measuring success of your product on sales, it's often harder to do that because the lead time for sales on products for B2B is often longer than it is for consumer products. So that's one of the difficulties.
Let's talk about maybe on that fewer customers. Like, how have you in the past tried to overcome the fact that there are a few customers? Like, how do you try and get those conversations or like some sort of feedback from them?
Yeah, I think there's in a B2B environment there's one key ingredient here. And that is the account managers or the commercial teams. And I think it's really crucial for product teams to really partner with these groups of people, because the commercial teams and the account managers are those people who have the close relationships with customers, and they know the customers very well. And here, for product people, you need to get close to the commercial team and the account managers. And for me, to do that, it's all about establishing a relationship of trust. Because generally,
it always comes down to that, doesn't
it? Generally, and rightly so, the commercial teams and account managers are very protective over their relationships with the customers, because
jobs
exactly. Well, those relationships are the ingredient for a successful company in B2B environment. So product teams have to establish that trust with those people. And what is trust? How do you do that? It's about showing you're capable in your role as a product person, and also you have the right intent. That's why I think.
Yeah, it's a really interesting topic, because also in a way we always think of product as you as the product manager should sort of also represent the product owner role, right? So know the customer at a very deep level.
Yeah.
But inevitably, if you're dealing with in B2B account managers, sales, they are just thinking about the customer all the time.
Yeah.
They should be, right? That's really the heart of their role.
Yeah.
So it's about, how do you find that balance, right, between developing your own knowledge about the customer whilst also recognizing that, these people are they're going to have a deeper level of knowledge and understanding of the customer, because that's all they do.
Yeah, in fact, and I look at it like this: product people must have a good domain knowledge, whatever domain they work in, and but the real specialism of product people is to create products and services which are fit for purpose, and that's a real skill, and that's hard to do. And to be able to be skillful in that and also have a very deep level of domain knowledge is very, very hard to do. In reality, it's very, very hard to do. So I think certainly my last role, where we was focusing on helping financial institutions think about climate change risk on property and property value and property portfolio value. Like for me, there was to get a deep understanding of that domain quickly is very, 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 very hard. So I partnered with a person in the company who'd worked in banks a lot, who knew the domain, who knew how to speak to the customers within the businesses, who knew the language and knew the problems inside and out. And that pairing of me wanting to try to do the research to gain into customer insights to create a really a product that was fit for purpose, along with partnering with this person who had that specialist knowledge, was a very, very successful combination. I thought it was really good. Actually.
That's great. I think that's great advice as well. You know, find a strong partner to work with. Because I think, as you said, first there's just the reality of inevitably you spend a lot of time like fighting fires, dealing with questions of feasibility, delivery, etc. So it's just, the reality is you need to be sort of absorbing knowledge rather than trying to just be that knowledge base yourself. I think also it reminds me of another sort of topic related around, you see a lot of companies, whether B2B or B2C, where the original sort of unique insight behind why we're doing what we're doing comes from the founder. They're the one that got the thing from 0 to 1. They understood the customer. They worked out what offer might work there, might resonate, and then sort of built out the first solution. And I think there's a bit of a myth or confusion, right, where the way we're told product works is, right, you're going to own this customer and own sort of this problem space in a way on some, regardless of company size. Like that's pretty much what you're going to be doing. Yet also, if you were not the one with the original insight, or you just don't have domain expertise, I think that's just not accurate about how it actually works in practice. You can put your stamp on it, but you're never going to, and even if the strategy is very clear and you have a very clear persona, you're still, it's this illusion of alignment, right? Where you think you share the same view about a thing, like the founder and the product manager, or the product manager and the expert, but inevitably you're going to be interpreting things in different ways. It's just how the human brain works. It's really interesting, actually, that approach. I think also, as you said, but I think that's one thing that I can see that you would be good at, like having obviously worked with you in the product MBA, just like being sort of honest and building trust. Are there any ways, is there, like, for example, a conversation you have, or do you feel it just comes, obviously with a lot of experience now, do you feel it comes naturally to you to just like start working with the right person, for example? Or is there a conversation you have, any tactics ultimately?
So I found in my last two roles recently, I've been consultancy roles, and as a consultant, you need to quickly form those relationships with people so that you can be productive. And really, for me, it's been about sharing with people my philosophy of product management, so they understand what that approach is to some degree. Just trying to share with them I try and be as inquisitive as possible, curious as possible about the domain, and treat the experts as true experts, and really show that I'm interested in this subject area, and I want to learn from them. And it's true, I want to learn from them, so that the only way I can be successful is by learning from people.
Yeah, I think it's really good advice there. So you touched upon sort of like just building trust by sharing openly your philosophy, like be as curious as possible, and also just treat the experts as expert. I think that final one is, it's definitely a mistake that I've made in the past is, you come in as the product person and you go, the message that you're sending, not deliberately, but ultimately the message you're sending is like, nobody knows everything. Like, we need to test everything. Like, great, you're an expert, whatever. Which, is partly true, right? We need to recognize that 80-90% of product ideas do fail. Like, they either have zero or negative impacts. Like, that's a fact. But equally, it needs to be done in a way that is recognizing the reality of the situation, being pragmatic and moving towards, rather than throwing everyone in the deep end, being like, right, scrap everything, like, here's my philosophy, fuck you guys, we're just going to go with this. Really about, just gradually sort of educating people about why you want to do things in a certain way. Whilst also, as you said, you're recognizing that there's a lot of experience in a company. And, if the company's been running 2, 3, 5 years, the people that have been there for that time have a lot of experience that you need to be soaking up and consulting.
Yeah, I agree with the sort of points that you made about being pragmatic is extremely important, and you can frustrate people very easily with going in with the philosophy of saying, well, as humans we need to be validating everything, because really we need to have that default position of we don't know anything, and we need to keep building through experiments. We need to test that. It's very hard, and for people who are experts of that domain to grab that concept, and they can become very quickly frustrated with you.
100%.
Because it just feels like you're wasting time. Why do we need to know that? Why do we need to do that?
Exactly.
Because
it's this is touching upon a big topic, right, around the whole problem with product generally, but I think particularly relevant when it comes to leveraging customer insight is the cultural norm is one of certainty. Right? So one thing I find really funny is, particularly in the UK, right? People go, oh, Boris Johnson's flip-flopping and Theresa May changing ideas, etc. So I was like, why the hell would you want them to continue on a course that doesn't make sense? Like, that's crazy thinking to me. Like, that's the norm, and that's the norm in business, right? It's like, here's our 2022 plan. Here's what we're going to do Q1. Here's what we're going to do Q2, et cetera, et cetera. And like, that's all going to happen. And here's exactly how we're going to deliver it. Like, here's the roadmap. That's just the way that, people, that we have been acculturated to. I think secondly, it's much more comforting to feel like we're in control of things. It's really difficult to basically go, we know nothing, like 10% of things work, then that would be a good outcome. It's like people staying motivated, not just losing their minds with sort of stress and anxiety. But these kinds of topics make it really difficult. And I think that's where you have to be very pragmatic when it comes to integrating this approach, right? Ultimately, this philosophy around product. Because, it's very easy to freak people out. Like sorry for rambling, a quick story I find really funny is I was doing a freelance role with a big, really successful German, I'm not going to name it because it'd be too obvious, but German healthcare company, startup, and they were launching their B2B side. So I sort of sat down with the 2 people that had been hired to start B2B. I'd been done in a very sales-led approach, but I was like, okay, let's add a product perspective. Essential conversation I had was, okay, at this point, like, we don't know anything about like who we're trying to target, like what the product might be, how we position things at all, and that's completely fine. Like, we're just going to learn as we go. Like that kind of, keep it really calm. I just saw one of the lead, right? So the person that was heading up the whole B2B stuff, just deer in the headlights, right? Just eyes open, like, oh my God, I don't know what is going on. The other person, like, yeah, this sounds awesome. And it was so interesting because she defaulted to just ignoring everything that happened and going, so we're just going to launch this social media campaign, right? They just couldn't handle it because it's such a mindset shift and such a shift from what you experienced and what's been taught before.
It definitely is, because even his children were throughout school were conditioned to know. So we know everything.
Yeah.
And what we're doing as product people is coming in and saying, well, we're going to build successful products by validating our thinking, and it's hard for people to grasp that concept. But when it works, it works. It works really well. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have to do it through you have to do it through showing people. You have to
exactly.
You have to choose something small, choose it as a quick experiment, and show people how it works. Rather than, you can't just tell people what works. It's the same. That's a very common approach, I guess.
Yeah, but I think on that, people listening will everyone's read about, we, speak to customers, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Many are in organizations where, particularly, less senior than yourself, right? Sort of junior, mid, senior PMs, right? They will simply say, well, great, but I can't integrate this kind of thing in my organization. So what would you, your experience as a consultant, like, what would you say? So you mentioned obviously show evidence. Can you give like one specific example of coming into an organization and sort of gradually shifting the mindset by showing, here's one thing, here's what customers are saying, here's how I think we should start redirecting our resources?
So the last place that I was working at, the same thing, but focus on climate change. I think when I joined, the approach that when I joined, the idea was it was a concept of, let's try and help financial institutions with climate change risk. And there was a lot of, in fact, actually, there was a lot of uncertainty here with this solution. Like, what are we going to do with this? How are we going to?
Quite a big problem as well, right?
Yeah, it is, and actually, the financial institutions themselves, what we learnt through speaking to them quite in detail, they don't know yet, or they're forming the picture themselves how they're going to solve this problem. So as a organization, we had a good idea of the direction we wanted to go down, and I brought in into some research sessions. We actually did a few empathy mapping sessions with some of the customers to truly get into the detail of what the customers, what the financial institutions were feeling and thinking about this problem. And I just think by bringing together in those conversations the account managers, the commercial people, and the people within financial institutions, and talk through these problems open and honestly. Like, yeah, look, our main concern here is that although this is a regulatory problem on the surface of it, underneath there are bigger problems that we need to focus on. And the certainty, okay, so I'm definitely rambling. The certainty was, this is a regulatory problem that we need to solve because the Bank of England was asking us to do these things. But really, we needed to explore deeper than that, deeper than being a regulatory problem, because the actual problem was much bigger than that for within financial institutions, such as how are we going to decide what level of climate change risk to take on? How are we going to get access to climate change data, and how can we trust it? That kind of thing. And it was very much focused on, like, how do we then take each one of these different specific problems and start to explore them in a bit more detail, and work with the commercial teams and the customers to go through these in detail, really. And we would make an assumption about something, and we would quickly test it, and we would the outcome of that, we'd look at the result, synthesize that information, and then make a decision which way to go on it. So it was very quick. Like testing of assumptions. That's what we did on those specific problems, to get more clarity around those bigger problems that the banks, that the financial institutions were having.
Yeah, and that's good advice. Is go qualitative first. To people, I think, because also stories are more compelling than looking at analytics data, for example, which can also be interpreted, misinterpreted. So I think that's really good advice. I think secondly on that, I've noticed as a general trend with effective product people, it's just being bold and doing the stuff. So
yeah, exactly.
It's another episode about, you just go and do the conversations. Like, you can come up with a million excuses. Just go and talk to people, like reach out to people. I think second part of that is be bold and like run a session. Yeah, an empathy map session. It can be an hour. Watch a YouTube video on how to do it. Like, do you want practice it with, a colleague that you can trust, right? Do it in a safe space before doing it with your boss and your team, for example. But I think it's, even if you're not getting, so you do one empathy map session, like you're not going to immediately convert the company to being product led, but you're also planting a seed and you're revealing to people that they are not clear about what exactly they're trying to achieve. Plants a seed which, eventually can be cultivated as, shifting really the behavior of how decisions are made across the organization.
And I think it also brings into what I learned from that session was that the people within the company hadn't really been involved in those collaborative, open sharing sessions before, and it was very much, again, similar to what I was saying before, like people having to know, having to have the right answer all the time, and it was a bit of a journey understanding that actually what these sessions are helping, these collaborative sessions are helping, is people within the organization that we're working for to start to think, actually, it's okay just to just to share anything that's in my brain right now and to get it out. And it doesn't matter whether it's right or wrong. The most important thing right now is just to share what I'm thinking. And I remember having a conversation with somebody and they were saying, well, why am I coming to this session? Because I don't actually know anything about this. And it turned out that this person knew everything about it. And I think what was more around, like, I'm not used to sharing this information.
Well, exactly. Yeah, 100%. There's also, I think, a lot to be said about workshops in terms of like, because you're sort of directing ideas at a board, in some way. So it's taking away the, my idea versus your idea element of it. And it's just like, here's this detached problem that we're thinking about, which generally reveals good ideas. But anyway, I think that is a great place to wrap up, actually. It's really, really interesting conversation. Good advice for anyone in B2B, like build trust, share your philosophy, like obviously be curious. I think also, as you said, be pragmatic and treat experts as experts. I think when it comes to actually putting ideas into action, it's like, how can you get some sort of quick win with a workshop or simply just a few customer conversations, just sort of reveal the direction you might need to go in. Anywhere do you want us to send people to? Your LinkedIn?
If you want to speak to me, come and speak to me. Send me a message on LinkedIn. I'm more than happy to talk with people about awesome. Any of these topics.
Nice. Well, I'll post your link obviously when we send the talk out. Thanks a lot, great. Dan. Been a pleasure. And we'll speak in a couple of weeks for our next leadership summit.
Yeah, great. Looking forward to it. Cheers.